Well, we're at the halfway point of the month of January. We have a lot of things going on, going for the rest of the week, the weekend, and next week, which includes, by the way, a bitter cold air mass from Canada that's going to cover pretty much everybody east of the Rockies and down to the Gulf Coast. We could have some snow events along the way, including another one in the deep south, and maybe later next week, one in the east. We'll see how that plays. But playing a lot sooner than that is tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which of course you can easily support by simply using the referral link at the top of the chat board or on the descriptor to this podcast. If you shop on Amazon, just use our referral link and then purchase whatever it is you're going to buy by using the search bar. And then you're on your way. You pay, you get your stuff. Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin for sending you there, and it doesn't cost you one dime out of your pocket. It also, by the way, keeps ads down on the show itself. We don't run ads during the show, so this is an easy way to make up for it. So we appreciate your support by shopping on Amazon. Let me just do. Hey, Alexa, can you brighten the bedroom lights, please? Thank you. Ever so slightly, but it does make a difference. So here we are. Midweek is upon us, Joe, and that Arctic air mass coming down next week is going to be a Lulu.
Well, I noticed on my Facebook memories page that 3 years ago on this day, it got down to 2 degrees here in my house and outside, not inside, thankfully. And we also had a snowstorm to deal with depending upon where you were in the Hudson Valley, anywhere from 1 to 4 or 2 to 5 inches of snow. Nothing like that today, however. But I do agree that it is going to turn quite cold as we move into next week.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm answering somebody on the chat board. Um, yeah, there's some changes going on next week overall that I think it's finally going to allow for maybe some room for something to try to climb up the East Coast in one form or another. I'm not 100% certain of how it comes out, how it plays out specifically. No one can be at this point,
Well,
unless you.
it was
Uh,
just annoying. It was just annoying to me that having dinner tonight and watching one of the local TV weather forecasters um, make the suggestion when somebody on the anchor desk just said, "Oh, when are we going to get some real snow?" And he said, "Well, it looks like maybe a week from tomorrow there may be a significant storm." And I said, "That's all. So and so has just created water cooler talk tomorrow morning. People will be saying, well, did you see last night's news? So and so said we may get a big snowstorm next Thursday." And again, it was just before we came on the air that my eyeballs finally stopped rolling round and round with that. I mean, they just don't learn, Joe. I mean, they just
well,
you can you can, you can allude to maybe something happening more than 5 days from now, but just allude to it. You don't make a semi promise like this forecaster did tonight. Like, well, we may have a big snowstorm, a week from tomorrow. Please don't.
I'm just making the point on the chat board. I just love when this happens. We spend a lot of our time talking about the fact, and I've said it multiple times recently. Oh, I guess I have to say it again. In terms of specifics, you cannot really determine what is going to happen. You can sort of have a general idea for the trend. You might have some idea when you get inside, say, 7 or 8 days, that there's going to be something someplace. But, you know, it's pretty obvious what the runs do from run to run. So to make blanket statements, I'm just kind of trying to get you folks to realize that if we had this show before the 18Z run, you'd be writing about the fact that the GFS had a 8 to 12 inch snowstorm, which is what it did on the 12Z run for later next week. Now it has, on this particular run, it has the same idea. It's got a low that runs, pretty much a coast hugger. Who knows Who knows at this point what's going to happen? But what I will say, and I think we can say in terms of an overall trend, as I stated about a minute or so ago, is that the Atlantic jet stream pattern, which has been an absolute west to east ruler, okay? So much so that not a single system has been able to climb northward in any fashion in the last 3.5 to 4 weeks. It's going to be changing. We're actually going to get a little bit of ridging off the East Coast, something that has been sorely absent. So if that's the case, if you get some energy to come out, it's going to probably bring some kind of weather system up the seaboard in some fashion. I don't know specifically what that fashion is. Um, we're going to have bitter cold Arctic air through at least the middle part of next week. So, you know, we can all look at a map and see what a map does. That's not forecasting. Okay, that's my point.
I agree.
You know,
Yeah.
not all of us here, you and I, everybody on the chat board, you can all look at model guidance. That is not forecasting. Okay. Because you have to be able to tell me why it's there and what the implications are. If you can't do that, then you're not really forecasting. You're just basically looking at something and just relating it back to me, literally. So there you go.
Well,
Um,
the interesting thing about that is that if you look at now here, we're talking about a potential for 23, January 24, and I find that interesting because the 6 to 10 day outlook by the Climate Prediction Center, the CPC, for that same time frame, January 21st to January 25th, shows the tri-state area in near or below normal precipitation probability. Now, if you're gonna say that there's going to be a major system coming up along the eastern seaboard, possibly for later next week, it certainly would show us at least in the probability for above normal precipitation. It does not. And when I go even further out to the 8 to 14 day outlook, just simply near normal.
yeah, but
And it's
you got to be careful with that, if only because of the fact that um, if you look at a lot of the snowiest months, all right, if you look at a lot of the snowiest months that we've had, when you melt it all down, a lot of those months have finished with below normal, below average precipitation for the given month. Because we all know that rain events usually produce more than snow events. So, you could have a month that say has 24 inches of snow for the whole month, and you melt it down to a 10-to-1 ratio, it comes out to 2.40. And unless you have other precipitation events in that month, let's just say those are the only three ones you have. Normal for January is about 3.5. So you can have below normal temperatures. And actually, if you've got a colder than normal pattern, particularly if you're like this, where you've got something where you're really deep into the cold air, it is likely to be below normal in terms of the melted precipitation. That doesn't
okay.
necessarily mean you can't get decent snowfalls out of it.
Okay. Well, just to go along with that, the CPC also has their um, probabilistic hazards outlook page, and for that time frame that we're interested in, January 23rd through January 29th, they have the Mid-Atlantic up to about the lower Delmarva and across the entire southeastern United States, a slight risk for heavy precipitation between the 23rd and the 23rd and the 29th. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So,
They
so
have a
that
slight risk. Can you show it?
yeah, if you give me the sharing capability.
Yeah. While you're loading that up, oh, there you go. Go ahead. Show it.
All right. Yeah. All right. Here, give me some time here. Uh, Precip. And yeah, so you could see slight risk from January 23rd to January 29th. During that period, they have the northern edge of the precipitation reaching just about up to the southern Delmarva and covering southeastern Virginia, most of North Carolina, practically all of South Carolina, most of Georgia. It looks like you're just outside of that. zone, Joe.
Right.
And most of Alabama, northern sections of Florida, including the northern part of the peninsula and the Panhandle. Also, I'd say the lower two-thirds of Mississippi and most of Louisiana. And if you want to continue into a part of southeast Texas, this is the area that they're highlighting for a slight risk for heavy or excessive precipitation. As you can see, as you go up into the northeast, it ain't nothing.
Did they put
So
this out? Did they put this out? Well, look, let's backtrack because last week for the stretch from the 20th, I forgot what the dates were, but last week, at the end of last week, they put out a slight risk, I think from January 19th through the 23rd, okay, where they had this really broad area covering, from New Mexico to the Great Lakes to Maine, and except for the coastal plain. That was the day that the GFS had uh, the um, the big storm going up to Cleveland to Western New York, and that was going to be for this coming weekend, which was what you're seeing with this cold front coming through. So just because CPC puts up a slight risk, don't mean it doesn't mean much in the scope of things unless they get it right. I will also show you. By the way, when was that issued? Because I'm kind of curious.
3 o'clock today.
Okay, now I'm going to show you what WPC issued at noon today. Does this look familiar? It should be on the screen momentarily. Does that look familiar?
Yep.
This is this is on the day 4 through 7 uh, long range for snow. It matches up almost exactly to what CPC did, which is an odd coincidence. The only difference is that they actually have the area. This is for Tuesday into Wednesday of next week. And this, by the way, is right off the European, which is totally different from the GFS, by the way. But they've got 30 to 50% chance for at least three in areas in southeast Louisiana and southwest Mississippi. This includes Baton Rouge. Just to continue to rub it in for snow lovers, they got a 30 to 50% almost, but not quite to Atlanta, from just south of Atlanta over to Columbia, South Carolina, to just north of Charleston. They have Myrtle Beach in a 30 to 50% chance for at least three, 2.5 to three, and Wilmington, North Carolina. So that's the kind of winter it is. 10 to 30% probability for at least 2 or 3 inches, even on Cape Hatteras, for God's sake. So this is on the notion, if you believe, if the European were taken literally, it would kind of show another southern storm that's going to go out to the south. I don't know that that's going to happen. I think there's a lot of flux in the models today, and more so than usual. So I think we're going to, see, quite a few shifts and changes that are going to be going on. But overall, I think next week it's going to be an interesting week with this bitter cold air around. Somebody's going to get something of size someplace. I'm just not sure yet where. I think that's about as fair a statement as anybody can make. Don't you think?
Well, yeah, and if you want to see any kind of substantial snow accumulation, or even a light accumulation, you want several days of extreme cold. That means that every flake, when it lands, will stick. Unlike some storms where you lose a little bit of it at the beginning because the ground is too warm or the snow is wet and slushy. So at least we're going to have one ingredient, and that will be the extreme cold. Now all you have to do is just find some kind of a significant disturbance that can buck that cold, push it up far enough from, let's say, the Gulf of Mexico or off the mid-Atlantic coast to produce that snow. And as I said before, you don't necessarily need a major super duper storm. If you have a big high in the right spot over the Northeast, all you need is a little disturbance poking its way northward and creating enough of a lift, if so to speak, to produce precipitation, which would be in the form of snow in that cold air, and you're off to the races in terms of snowfall. So yeah, maybe something, maybe late next week, but again, too far in advance to get into the specifics.
Right.
Uh, and I would just simply say your next possibility would be Thursday of next week. I wouldn't go as so far as this forecaster on local TV making the assumption, or not the assumption, but the illusion that, hey, we could have a pretty good sized system, pretty good sized storm, a week from now. Because as I said, that's going to be water cooler conversation tomorrow. People will be gathering around the water cooler at work and say, hey, I heard there's going to be a big snowstorm next Thursday, and then away you go.
Well,
Then you start,
it's already started, so it doesn't really matter.
yeah.
We've been seeing it for weeks now. We're going to see it for the weeks going forward. Welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight. Welcome to those of you watching in the background, the lurkers. We know who you are here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. It's a 7 o'clock start tonight, but we'll be back to our normal 7:35 start for tomorrow. And then I'm thinking we probably won't be needing to go on Friday or Saturday. So we go back to our regular schedule, which is Sunday through Thursday at 7:35. Subscribe. Make sure your notifications are on. And if you like the show, hit the like button because we like it when you hit the like button. I'm going to, when I get some time, I'm going to do a little research to find out how much snow has fallen in areas around um, central West Virginia in the mountains, because this area here, for the first time in many years, and going into parts of southwestern Pennsylvania, places like Johnstown, for example, have gotten more snow than they used to get. I occasionally talk to someone who's in the Johnstown area and does plowing there, and he remembers a time when lake effect would always get them, and in the last number of years, more than the last several years, it probably goes beyond that. It's as if that lake effect machine was shut off. And this year, it seems to have really come back. We've got winter storm warnings up tonight for some counties in southwestern Pennsylvania, down through the mountains of West Virginia. There's another 4 to 8 inches of snow forecast there. Winter weather advisories in western Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio. Also, a small portion of northwestern West Virginia, northern West Virginia. Still got some lake effect snow warnings in southwest New York and a few leftover winter weather advisories in north central New York State. Otherwise, quiet weather. Red flag warnings continuing in Southern California from north of Los Angeles down to San Diego as they get into another round of fire. But this pattern change, let's call it a pattern. It's not so much a pattern change as it is a pattern realignment, is going to lessen the Santa Ana winds in Southern California. And I'll show you when we get to the maps, the models, why that is the case. So looks like we got an upper trough, Joe, that's approaching the western Great Lake. That's actually now moving through the central Great Lakes and heading eastward. I threw in the chance that there could be a coating or maybe as much as a half an inch tomorrow across eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. Not everybody gets it. That we get some patchy areas of snow showers that will form ahead of that upper trough, and they, depending on what model you look at, if you look at the HRRR, it has snow into eastern Pennsylvania by noon tomorrow. If you believe some of the other short range models, it holds it off until later in the afternoon and into the evening. I kind of went with the later ones, which probably means you should prepare for the earlier ones. So on that note, I did put that in the forecast. I don't know if you mentioned that there could be some snow showers tomorrow with this.
I said, and this will annoy the heck out of Tom Contino.
What?
I, I said, spotty light snow.
Talk about a
Risk,
targeted forecast, but go
a
ahead.
risk. I did this on purpose, right? I wanted to really just to annoy Tom. Risk of spotty light snow or flurries late in the day tomorrow or early tomorrow evening. Spotty light snow. Did not mention anything about accumulation. I just felt that there may be some snow in the air from time to time and place to place late in the afternoon tomorrow and early tomorrow evening. And by later tomorrow night, the sky's going to a clearing mode and should set the stage for what I think will be the nicest day we're going to see out of the next 4 or 5, if not more. A beautiful sunny day on Friday. And the thing about Friday, we're so used to the cold again now and tomorrow. And by Friday, it's going to become decidedly milder. I think it could be as much as 10 degrees milder on Friday afternoon as opposed to what we're going to see here tomorrow afternoon. And if you
Yeah.
think that's mild on Friday, it gets even milder on Saturday. A cold front, an Arctic front, will be approaching from the west, but the southwesterly winds ahead of the front should push temperatures on Saturday into the mid 40s, which means that when we get precipitation on Saturday afternoon and evening, it likely will be wet, not white. Isn't that disgrace? What a
On
Tom.
Saturday?
Yeah, and Tom
Yeah, a
is
few
saying
showers on a few rain showers on Saturday. Yeah, I know it's all this cold air and then it warms up and rains. That's
54 to right now in Binghamton. It's 54 degrees and barely over 2 inches of snow on Long Island. What a disgrace, he said. Well, Tom, I don't know
wait,
about
wait,
you.
who's 54?
He said 54 in Binghamton.
Oh no, it's not 54 degrees in Binghamton right now.
Well, what a disgrace, Tom.
Well, Tom, I'm going for a coating to maybe some pockets of a half an inch for later tomorrow. Although it's going to be patchy. Joe used the word spotty. I'm using the word patchy. The
Wait a
Bible
minute,
knows.
54. I make a mistake. I made a mistake before Tom reaches for his keyboard in frustration and anger. Is 54 inches in Binghamton and barely 2 inches on Long Island. So
Oh,
he's
okay. You mean the snow total so far in Binghamton this season is 54?
right. So he's frustrated that Binghamton has all that snow and Long Island has hardly anything, and that's what's frustrating to him, and that's
But
what's
you know
getting it.
what? Binghamton doesn't have congestion pricing.
That's right. That's
So
right.
why don't you move to Binghamton? I will tell you, if you've never been up to Binghamton, it's kind of like there's Binghamton and then there's not much else around it. It's like somebody plopped a small city and forgot to maybe populate the suburbs a little bit. It's literally you come drive out of nothing to a small city that's, and I use the term city in quotes. I mean, I'm not that against Binghamton, but it's a small city. It's a large town or a small city, however you want to put it. But there's not a whole lot around it. Not that I'm complaining, because I live in a place where I'm pretty isolated, and I like it that way. So, one other thing that's notable across the United States is the fact that much of the day U.S. weather is quiet. There really isn't a whole lot going on. We've got a little bit of subtropical moisture along the Gulf of Mexico, and that in the Gulf of Mexico, and that's producing some rain showers along the Texas and Louisiana Gulf Coast, and also across central Florida. And there's your upper trough that's moving through Wisconsin now and heading toward Lake Michigan, with some snow showers there as it heads to the southeast. Nothing of consequence from the Storm Prediction Center, nor do we expect there to be. And the 7 day liquid precip totals, you'll notice that they are abundant in the Gulf Coast. Although I also noticed that WPC didn't really change this map very much from what they had this morning. They changed the times on it and they changed the dates, but they didn't change much anything else. A tenth to a quarter of an inch of liquid for the next 7 days. So that takes us to at least next Wednesday from Maine to Virginia. So, if the models are correct in terms of timing, it's hard to fathom how you're going to see something here about, the middle part of next week. Maybe the latter part of next week, perhaps, I think is probably a better possibility at the end of next week. But I don't, a week from today, it's kind of pushing it. But we've got some ample precip in the southeast, and of course, we're going to be watching carefully across areas in the deep south, and maybe even down closer to the Gulf Coast this time around, for some of that to be in the form of ice and snow, as well as in the southeast. And once again, you go west of the Mississippi, except for some patchy precip in the Rockies, along the lines of a tenth to a quarter of an inch over 7 days. There ain't nothing as far as precip is concerned. Uh, so I want to just really quick show uh, what's going on here in the West. We were talking about the Santa Ana winds, and um, you've got this you have this strong upper high to the north in Northern California and points northward. and there's a ridge that goes up into the west. There's this cutoff low that in the upper atmosphere that's sitting west of Baja, and you'll notice that the upper air winds coming around that low are all easterly. So you effectively have a very tight. This was the setup here for the Santa Ana winds, okay, and we still have that tonight. But as we go through the next couple of days, that upper low finally gets ejected inland into Arizona on Friday. So we're going to see those winds break down. Also, the ridge to the north breaks down. So the Santa Ana winds are going to go away. So that's good news as far as what's going on in California, in Southern California. Just kind of have to get through night tonight and a part of tomorrow. And then once that upper low goes inland, things should relax. Meanwhile, when we look out into the Atlantic, you'll notice when this trough that's overhead now pulls out, there's not much of a ridge off the East Coast. You know, everybody complains when we get these winters where you get a strong southeast ridge and it's warm up the coast. Okay, you need a little bit of a southeast ridge in order to bring a storm up the seaboard. May not necessarily have to be right off the southeast coast, but if right on the southeast coast, but if you have a little bit of ridging off the coast, that would help the cause of helping storms to climb up the seaboard. That has been completely absent. The block is pretty much gone, but now we've got this big upper low from Hudson Bay, and it's just this gigantic broad bowl. So the systems that are rotating around it, and there's one coming for Sunday, it doesn't really back the flow enough in the east. It's so broad. I mean, you could barely pick out the shortwave trough in there. I mean, it's okay, but it's nothing special. So I'm still going to hang on to the idea, although a couple of the models, Joe, make the case that there might be very little in the way of precipits late Sunday night into early Monday morning. But I think that this could still wind up being a situation where somebody, as the Arctic air arrives and there's a little bit of a bump in the stalled frontal boundary offshore, that somebody gets maybe an inch or maybe 2 inches from say uh, northeastern Virginia up into southeastern New England. And it might be one of those instances where, eastern Long Island and southeastern New England would be on the higher end of that range, and everybody else will be on the lower end.
Quite frankly, I'm thinking if there's anything that's going to come out of the disturbances that we're looking at over the next 4 or 5 days, I think the one late on Sunday into Sunday night might have more of a significance, excuse me, as opposed to what might be coming our way later on in the week, later, mid or late week. So we'll see. I mean, again, these systems are moving so rapidly, and it's so tough sometimes for the computers to, keep track of what's going on. And sometimes you get, again, a couple of systems that teleconnect and form a bomb off, let's say, the mid-Atlantic coast or someplace. You really can't say. But one thing I think we can say with a certain amount of certainty or surety, Joe, is indeed it is going to turn much colder, sharply colder. I don't know if we could say locally here in the tri-state area, it'll be the coldest temperatures we've seen yet, because if you remember in early December, we had that wind coming straight down from the
Yeah,
north.
I think this is going to be as cold as that. It might be a shade colder.
Would help if we had even a minor blanket of snow on the ground. That would really make it cold, wouldn't it?
Well, um, just to look at some temperatures, but before we do that, let me clean this map up a little bit because I got a lot of info on it. So this is the snowfall forecast through next Saturday evening, and you can see the lake effect snow amounts for another foot to a foot and a half. You see that arm that goes down through Southwest PA into West Virginia. The Weather Service with the upper trough coming through tomorrow night has areas again patchy, some areas coating, maybe you got some ones in there. The light blue is mostly like less than an inch. That's sort of like half an inch or less, and then you get that first shade of blue just north of Harrisburg, and then going up to Scranton, it looks like 1 to 2 inches in there. I don't expect any upside from tomorrow, um, but as far as temperatures go, I think just a couple of things. So Monday, all right. So you're seeing some of these numbers that are on the map where it's in the upper 20s to around 30. I think that's left over from overnight. In other words, these will probably be the temperatures around or just shortly after midnight. That's when the highs of the day will be achieved. And I think we spend the um, the day side on Monday, just kind of holding in the low and middle 20s, maybe even easing a bit into the upper teens and low 20s by the end of the day. And off the digital forecasts, and I think these are going to be close. So these Monday lows that you see of in the teens is not. I don't think that's going to be the temperatures Monday morning. I think those are going to be the temperatures. The lows of the day will be right before midnight Tuesday. So by Tuesday morning, we're looking at mostly 10 or less, and certainly single digits. I mean, all the way down into Virginia, well down into Virginia, well up to Pennsylvania. You get up into the Hudson Valley and in the Catskills, you're looking at below zero numbers there, and below zero numbers as you go north and west, and single digits in New England. The Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, I think will be also just as cold, with temperatures bottoming out in the single digits. You're right. If we had snow cover, we'd probably be about 5 to 7 degrees lower than this. And the high temperatures, I think for Tuesday, Joe, a lot of areas are not going to get out of the teens on Tuesday. And Wednesday, we might break back to above 20 in most places. So this is going to be, I think, every bit as cold as though that stretch we had back in December.
Well, we'll see. Anybody out there who was thinking that we weren't going to see much of a winter, certainly we have had, at least from a temperature standpoint, pretty cold winter so far in recent weeks. And who's to say what's going to be landing on our plate later on this month and into the rest of the winter season, Joe?
Well, here's the idea for next week. So this deep, broad bowl trough will eventually pull out. It's hard to see how anything, if this is right, it's very, you're not going to be able to bring a storm up a week from today up the East Coast. Not with this. You got to get this to pull out. Now, once it does, for the first time, we're actually getting, if you notice, all the brown areas here, particularly the brownish area that's east of Cape Cod to south of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, pressures are rising there. You're getting some ridging. So now, as the next trough swings around, and here it comes for late in the week and sharpens up. This is where I think you could finally get something to try to come out of the Gulf of Mexico and move up the East Coast in some fashion. Now, I don't know exactly where. You saw the GFS give you a rough idea of what it thought was going to happen, with an offshore track on one run and a slightly inland track on another. You're not going to know the answer to this until, Monday or Tuesday of next week anyway. So that's that solution. It's got a nice little ridge in the west too. So this, I think, has a chance to be different. The other thing is, if you look at the Europeans got a whole different view of things. So here's your broad bowl. Okay, what the European seems to do is that it takes part of that broad bowl, instead of bodily moving it out the way the GFS does. You'll notice that there's a trough that hangs back in the southwest again, and another trough drops into that. So it seems to want to sweep all of its energy into a deeper trough that runs, very much positively tilted from James Bay to New Mexico, and then it just leaves it. It just gets left behind. So you've got a phasing trough on the GFS. You've got a split flow on the European. And the thing is, Joe, anytime the GFS has tried to phase something in the last couple, certainly in the last 6 weeks, it has been dreadfully wrong. So we want to be careful here about, just jumping the gun and saying that the GFS solution, which is to bring a storm up the eastern seaboard, is the correct solution. We got to see whether that whole trough pulls out or not. If you look at the European just takes, it's got one. Here's the front for Saturday with some rain showers, and it really does. It's like spits of rain. We're really not talking about very much. And then this wave develops, and you get, brushed by a little bit of snow late Sunday afternoon as the colder air is coming in and Sunday night. And of course, the bottom falls out with the big high and all the cold air. Then you get a Gulf flow that forms and moves across the deep south on Tuesday, but that snow never makes it further north than southeast Virginia. And they get significant snows across the Gulf states and into the southeast, and then that goes out. And then there's another one at the end of the week, and that goes out underneath. Whereas the GFS, because it pulls the whole trough out the way it does, is different in that you get, the big high goes all the way down into the southeast, and then a Gulf flow doesn't come out until late in the week. This is next Thursday. And then you wind up with a low that rides up the East Coast sometime Thursday night and Friday. So there you have it.
You want to see these models, and again, this doesn't happen until usually within about 3 or 3.5 days of the actual event. But you want to see them all on the same page. You don't want to see one model going this way and another model going that way. It just then what you have to do. Then what happens is that you end up, with a bunch of people in one camp versus the other camp or whatever, and that's not the way to forecast. Again, you can allude to the fact that things may get active for a certain time next week, but if you want to be specific or you want to play specifics, you're going to have to wait until. This is why I wish that all of the models, the global models, were like the NAM and don't go out any further than 84. Of course, if it didn't go out any further than 84, you'd still have forecasters who would then go and extrapolate. Well, here it is at 72 and here it is at 84. Let me see if I can stretch that down and see where it's
But
going
I
to go.
would rather have them do that than just take blanket pictures of models and post them up there and just say,
Exactly.
and go biblical. At least they're using their heads.
Right.
I would rather them do that. We used to do it when we only had model guidance that went out 72 hours or 84 hours. We would just do like straight line extrapolation. It oftentimes didn't work, but nonetheless, at least we tried to use our heads.
You had the human mix in the equation,
Right.
as opposed to these people who arbitrarily see something 7 days down the road, look at it and say, hey, this looks great, and automatically, and then they post it, and then when they post it on Facebook, they always have the disclaimer. Now, this is not a forecast.
I
Give me a
know.
break. Give
It's
me a
not a for If it's not a forecast, then why are you putting it up?
exactly.
That's just the bottom line. If it ain't a forecast, don't put it up. You know, Uh, but we've gone through this a number of times. Anthony Orr hitting the tip jar tonight. Thank you, Anthony. Most appreciated. And David Fuller also hit super chat a little earlier. Thank you for hitting the tip jar. Are those clouds off off the Jersey coast where the Gulf area is? I don't know if you're. I don't think they're playing golf out in the ocean, so I'm going to guess that you're talking about the Gulf Stream. Let me see. It's on the satellite. Well, I mean, that's also the cold air going over the warm ocean that you're seeing all those clouds that are developing. So that's what that is. Yeah, I'm thinking he means Gulf Stream, Joe, and not golf. Oh, and Sal Patchy, thank you for banging the tip jar in a very generous way. Thank you. And health and prosperity to you too.
Hey, Sal, did I tell you, Joe, that I met Sal's wife
Yes, you did.
the Saturday before Christmas? And
Sal needs Sal needs some snow for overtime. It's in, you need Joe since you're nearer to Westchester County than I am. He wants you to make it snow there.
well, if I were able to make it snow, why don't I just go down to the local deli and buy a lottery ticket next time the Mega Millions hit $500 million, and I could wave my arms and say, "Woof," and that would be, and then you would no longer see me on the Joe and Joe show. Or actually, Joe, if I won that lottery, I'd just build our own television and radio outlet, and we could have weather 24/7. If just you and me, 24/7.
Oh, well, yes, that would be, oh, what a powerful, powerful show that might be.
Yes.
24/7. Matt Coletta, I'm not exactly sure. By the way, you left some comments on a couple of the shows last week, and I didn't quite understand what you were getting at. So maybe you should go back and look and explain to me what you were getting at with some of them. I wasn't understanding them, and I'm not sure who you're referring to. The You guys wear white shirts like NASA technicians. I'm in a blue sweatshirt. Joe, are you not in a white shirt, are you?
No, I'm in kind of a dark red plaid. I don't know what I'm wearing exactly, but it's nice and warm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually I got my sweatshirt and I got flannel underneath. So I'm not sure what that means. But no matter. Uh, okay, let's come back up. We're coming up on 7:41, so I know you got things to do, which is why we're doing the 7 o'clock start. You want to run through Briller Jeopardy quickly?
Sure. Let me just get the old
Leon of
winner.
Lindenhurst, hitting the tip jar. Thank you, Leon. Most appreciated. 106 likes, Mr. Rayo. You need to ring the bell.
I didn't see that. I'm sorry.
That's quite all
My
right.
counter is not counting.
Keep falling down on the job, Mr. Rayo.
There you go.
Thank you.
There you go. Ring, 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 ring for the 106 likes. So let's.
Sal, Sal Patsy, we'll try to make it snow for you next week. We'll try. I don't know how successful we're going to be. Either that, or you're going to have to come down here to North Georgia because I may get more snow. Because if you weren't on at the beginning of the show, well, I don't know if I mentioned it on the show tonight. Maybe said it to you off camera, but we are now 6 days from when it started snowing here, and there are still roads that because a lot of roads here are not county roads, they're private roads. A lot of developments have just private roads. And when you have private roads, it's not the county's responsibility to clear them up. So a lot of them are unplowed, and plus the fact that a lot of them are on big hills. A lot of people have dry houses that are on big hills. I'm talking big hills, Joe. So they are, and in the woods. So I still have an inch of snow cover out here, even though it got to 40 today. But uh, there, there's work to be had. Someone who wants to do some private plowing here. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, well, this latest set of questions from Chairman Briller on this on this Briller Jeopardy, the average high temperatures in the month of January, the average highs for the following cities in the month of January. We will start, Joe, with Indianapolis. Average high in January for Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. I will say, I'll say 36.
What did you say?
36.
36. And you know what I'm going to do, Joe?
You're going to
Just
ring the bell?
I'm going to ring the bell.
36.
36. Right on the nose. Right on the nose.
Well, that wasn't too
Amazing.
bad.
Tom Contino just said on the chat board, private roads. I never heard a concept like that. I don't know. Memphis. Memphis, Tennessee.
Well, Atlanta's 54.
CWTR Shark says this game is rigged. Every
Atlanta's,
time, every time you hit it on the nose, Joe, it's rigged. It's a rigged game.
Atlanta's at 54. Memphis is a little west northwest of there, so I'll say 52.
Ouch! Snake Country, Joe. You almost did it again for two in a row.
Really?
Yes. Maggie P
52.
with
So
50.
Donald Colgan said 53, and Mike Waterhouse Bonsai said 51.
51. Mike Waterhouse Bonsai. Congratulations. You get the cigar. I don't have any cigars to. Wait a minute. I still have the one from 22 years ago.
Oh, go away with that, will you please? It's making me, just the ideas makes me nauseous.
It's a Don. It's a Don Leo
I'm
special.
telling you, if you ever try to light that thing, it's just going to go to dust.
Well, it's been sitting in my drawer for all of these years. I don't know what's going to happen to it. How about Miami?
Miami, average high in January.
Yes,
Hmm, I don't know, 68,
too low, Joe.
too low. I was going to originally say 71, but um,
It's still too low.
yeah. All right. Well, Rich Rothmansky said 74.
That's still
Okay,
low, but
that's
closer.
still low.
Michael McGuire's even closer with 75.
And John Melander said 77.
And the guy who said that the game was rigged, CWTR Shark, is correct with
And
76.
76.
And Vincent Croce with 76.
Okay.
And Adam Lowe and Chuck Cardillo, 76. And Frank Scalera, all of you with 76. It's the spirit of 76 night. Now, let's move to Minneapolis. Average high temperature in Minneapolis in January.
What did we say for International Falls the other day? What did we say? 17 or something or 18?
Something like that.
All right. So I'll say
I'll tell you exactly if I can find it here.
uh,
International Falls, 14.
14.
Yes.
So for Minneapolis, I'll say 21.
Little on the low side.
Little on the low side. Okay. Uh, uh, CWTR Shark said 27. Vincent Croce at 24.
And
Mike
that's Michael McGuire also said 24. And James Davidson said 24. And you are correct.
and
It's
Mike
the
Waterhouse Bonsai said 24.
Willie Mays' number, 24.
24. Okay.
Plain video said 273 degrees below zero. But that's not going to work.
No.
Uh, um, is that if that was Celsius, that would be what? Absolute zero? I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Nashville.
Zero. Nashville.
Nashville.
What we just say for Memphis was 51.
Yes.
All right. So Nashville, I'll say 40, 48.
Almost, Joe.
Too low or too high?
Too low.
Too low. So and we got some 49s here from Lou Arizio and Michael McGuire.
Right.
And
Well, that's it. That's 49.
it's 49.
Yes.
Okay.
And now
So
the bonus. The bonus. Not Martha's Vineyard, but Nantucket.
Nantucket. Um, it's a little tricky. I don't know. I'll say New York City is like 39, 38, 39. Boston is like 33, 34. So I'll say 38.
Close. Not high enough though.
38. Mike Waterhouse Bonsai said 40.
And that
It's
is
40.
it. Okay.
I was
So the
originally going to go with 40, but
final
I
vote.
took a slight step back. Well, not too bad. I did okay today, except for Miami was my biggest miss.
And I ran across the other day on YouTube the episode of Mary Tyler Moore, "The Snow Must Go On," where they had a snowstorm hit on election day,
Election day.
and it shows you how somewhat out of date that episode is, because right in the middle of the snowstorm, and Ted Baxter is like fading away. They need somebody because there's no vote counts coming in because all the lines are down.
Right.
And she turns around and figures that the political consultant has arrived so they can at least kill some time by talking with him. So she taps the guy on the shoulder and says, "Doctor," and the guy turns around and says, "Father." He said, "Dr. Father?" Says, "Father Flint." And
Nice.
and he says, "I didn't expect to see a priest on election night." Now it's like 2:30 in the morning. And this shows you how out of date things are because this doesn't even exist anymore on television. But he says, "It's my turn to do sermonette."
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. When we were kids, they had that sort of stuff on in the morning.
if you too young to understand, TV stations actually used to sign off like at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and when they did, they played the national anthem before they signed off, and before that, they would have the either a priest or sometimes a rabbi or whatever give you a spiritual message, and in most TV markets it was called sermonette. And in this episode of Mary Tyler Moore, the priest who's going to do sermonettes 2:30 in the morning, he said, "It's my turn to do sermonette," and Mary says, "Could you help Ted Baxter out?" He says, and you see Ted there slumped over his chair like he could barely move. And he says, "I haven't seen a man suffer like that since Job."
Nice.
Funny episode, really funny. You love the
Uh,
ones. You love the ones with Betty White.
I
That's
love
what a
those.
good episode is.
Oh,
Is
she was
the
great.
yep.
She was great. Anyway, I always see clips on reels on Facebook. So yeah, that was a great show. All right. Speaking of a great show, our great show is now over with for tonight. So we'll be back tomorrow night, back at the regular time to finish off the week at 7:35 p.m. Looks like everybody behaved themselves tonight, which is really good. So have a good evening and be safe, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 7:35. Night, night.
Good night, folks.